Hi everyone, good morning. I am making a video today to quickly show you how I would combine a couple images together, but maybe in a nicer and slightly more than basic way. So I'm going to use Photoshop Mix, and I have a video already where I made like a person's face out of fruit, but that was not as elegant. That was more of a beginner video. This is where we get into some more advanced features of Photoshop Mix. So what I'm doing, especially if you're my student, you're going to be doing this in my classes, is you will make a surreal image based on a song. And it helps if you choose a song that already has some odd imagery. So I chose the song Clocks by Coldplay. I think that song has a lot of really interesting imagery to work with, but the song is up to you. So I thought about some of the lyrics and I highlighted a couple specific ones that were interesting. There's one about shooting an apple off their head, tigers, seas, clocks. I also just kind of need a person to be in the midst of it, so I wrote that in a different color, blue. So this is my planning. I kept it simple. I know the song by heart, so I didn't really have to look up the lyrics much for this. After that, I went on Google Images and I found some images to work with. So they basically fill that whole bottom row. I couldn't really decide on the C's that I wanted, so I just picked a couple and looked at my other images to figure out what I was looking for and which one was best. I just knew that I needed something kind of stormy. The whole song feels pretty urgent, so I wanted to pick some C's that were not very happy. So I'm going to make a new composition here, and I'm going to start with my image. So I'm going to look at that background image that I'd like, and I think I like the one with the mountains best. We might not be able to see the mountains when we're done, but I like them from the beginning. And there are a couple things you can do with your background right away if you want to, because you can kind of play with your temperature and kind of mess with it just a little bit if you would like to. I think it would be nice to boost the contrast just a little bit more in here. So I might do things like that. For saturation, I might actually take it down just a little bit. I think that would look kind of cool and maybe a little bit scary because this C is not supposed to be pleasant. So then, once I have that all set up, I'm going to add my next image, and this is where we start getting into some more advanced features of Photoshop Mix. So I have a picture of a clock and it's getting close to midnight. I thought the urgency was good, and I think there's just a lot of symbolism there. So I purposefully chose this image here, and I chose a nice thin one so I can kind of start to layer it over my background. And if I were to just drop it here, that wouldn't really look all that nice or professional. I have a plan here. So what I'm going to do is figure out if I want to make it right or left, or if I just kind of want to center it over everything. So that's kind of a choice I have to make. I think I like the idea of, I think I like centering it. So I'm going to move that to the middle, but when I work with it, instead of doing a regular cutout from it, what I'm going to do is go to that blend mode first, because you can look at the different modes that are available and start to mess with those and figure out which one works for you. A lot of these are really, really cool. So mess with those layers a little bit. I think overlay is pretty cool. And then I can just go in and refine it just a little bit more. And you can also change the opacity of what you're adding on. I'm gonna make it, I'm gonna take down the opacity just a little bit, so this still kind of fades into the background. And then I can still do a cutout if I would like to. I think I'll just subtract from the current one, or did a weird thing. I'm going, whoa. This is displaying a little bit differently than I'm used to. Okay, so I'm going to do a cutout here of the background because I don't really want all of those hard edges. I want it to fade just a little bit here. So I'm going to take anything that kind of has a really perfect edge and start getting rid of it just a little bit. I'd like it to be a little bit rougher. I don't want it to get rid of the hands, so I'll just be really careful here around it to not select too much, just because I want it to be kind of floating in the background. I don't want it to be super obvious. And then there are a couple other things that you can do to refine it a little bit, and you can use things like lasso if you want to be really specific. I'm okay with what this is doing for me. And then you can use refine. This is where you can get into your edges and see if you want to like feather it at all and make it a little bit kind of blurry when you add it back in to the background. So you can play with that, and you can play with your different edges too and see how fuzzy you want them to be and how you want it to make them blurry. So mess with those a little bit too. See what you want to do. I kind of like the idea of making kind of fuzzy. I'd like to feather it just a little bit to make it kind of blur in that background. And then, do you see how it kind of blends in just a little bit more with the background and kind of fades? And I think that looks a lot better. So then, once you're happy with it, you can start moving on to your next layer. So my next step is to add the tiger part of this, but I need the tiger to be floating on something. I don't really want it to just be walking on water. So I'm going to cut this out and have it kind of floating on the water like a raft. I figured I would put another ticking clock in here, and I'm not sure exactly where it's going to go, but I'm pretty sure it's going to go right about there. So I will kind of make this bigger so I can play with it a little bit easier, and then I'll move it around. So let's do a cutout. I don't really want to get the sand with it, so I'll have to go back and refine that in just a minute here. So I'll get that chain, and then I think it'll be easier to zoom in and subtract stuff from my selection from there. So I'm going to go in, hit subtract, just get rid of all of this extra background sand, because it's going to have a hard time separating that from the image because they're really similar colors. If it really is struggling, but you absolutely know that you must have that image, you can go into the lasso, and that will also help you refine, but then you have to have a steady hand and really be careful when you're selecting, which is a bit of a struggle for me. If the edges are a little bit rough, I can still feather it. So I think I'll use that tool too, and I think that will help for the sake of time, so I can demonstrate this and not have a super long video. I'm gonna zoom in, subtract. Whoa, that's too much. At this point, you might already even pretty much feel like, oh, okay, well, by now I can probably guess how to use the tools. That's totally fine. I'll just feather that part. If you do this in actual Photoshop, usually my key to making stuff blend in a little bit better. Instead of hitting any buttons that say feather or anything, you can just kind of use your eraser to feather the edges yourself, which I really, really like. Right now I'm more of a Photoshop on computer kind of person because I like having that kind of control, and I'm just more used to computers just generally. But I'm impressed with Photoshop Mix so far. Oh my goodness. We'll draw this back on. We'll figure something out. Let's subtract this. So I'm going to use my lasso here and just start subtracting this whole thing. Better. I'm just gonna draw around this edge. Take this off. Probably should have used my lasso earlier. It's okay. I'll just get rid of this thing. Once you're happy with your cutout, you'll go ahead and place. Start figuring out how you want it to sit in there. One thing I forgot to do is I forgot to do the edge feathering, but that's okay. I'm gonna move on past that for now, just for the sake of time. I'll do that with the tiger. So I have this floating there. It doesn't look perfect. Part of the reason why is because it just looks too bright. So I'm going to adjust it and start doing things that are going to make it match the scene a little bit better. I'll cool it down a little bit with the highlights. You can bring those up, but you can also bring them down. I'm going to bring it down just a little bit and start to make it match. Shadows, you can move those around. Let's boost the contrast just a little bit. Maybe take some of that saturation out a little to make it kind of dull like the rest of the scene, and that starts to blend it a little bit better. Now let's put the tiger on it. So I'm going to grab the tiger and start cutting it out. So we'll go to cut out. Ooh. Okay, I don't really want to use the lasso anymore, so I'm gonna undo that. I'm gonna use the smart. Try to mostly get it right here. I'll zoom in. Grab that part. Now the tiger is standing in grass, but it's going to be standing on something a little more exact in here. Mostly for the sake of this assignment and practice, I'm not going to worry about it. If this was a thing I was, like professionally doing, I would worry about it a little bit more. But again, this is just an assignment for practice. You're just kind of supposed to have fun with this. So if there's a little bit of grass that comes with him, or if he doesn't quite perfectly make sense on the clock, it's a surreal image. We're chalking it up to that. So let's get the ears and the edge of the face. Okay. So now what's happened is I've selected a little bit of the rock behind the tiger, but this is where I'll use my lasso tool and refine that selection just a little bit. So we'll subtract using that. So we'll take that off of there. We'll take out that area above the ear. We'll start kind of fixing this up just a little bit. And you'll notice the lasso tends to automatically feather things a little bit, which is definitely nice. I also need to add a little bit up at the top that I forgot, and I may as well use the lasso tool because I'm already in the lasso tool, so I'll use that to add, and then I'll subtract that bit of grass up there. I also selected in between the tail. I could probably actually fix this with the automatic tool, but this is a little bit faster. So once I'm pretty much happy with my selection, I want to go to refine, and I'd like to feather those edges just a little bit. I think that will blend him in. It kind of gives a slight glow around him, but I'm kind of okay with that because this is kind of a weird composition anyway. So I'm going to go ahead and move him and put him on the clock. So there he is. He's going to sit down there and watch from the clock. Now he doesn't totally make sense there. He doesn't match the colors. So again, this is where I go into adjust. I'll turn down the saturation a little bit dull. Change the temperature, cool him down, make him match kind of that bluish light. I'll up the contrast so we can see him a little bit better, and I can mess with the highlights and shadows to match the way I think the scene is lit. And now he makes a lot more sense there. Next thing I think I'll add is I'll add the man. I'm going to have him swimming in this chaotic sea. So let's grab him. So the nice thing about this is there's already water, but the hard thing about this is I have to make this water match the rest of this water. So what I'm thinking is I'll need to take the white splashes with him, but not the other stuff. So I really might have to go in with a lasso to make this work. So I'm gonna make this big, so I have an easier time with the cutout part. And I'm going to start with the Smart selection and then kind of refine this as I go. So I definitely want this man in here. Anything that's kind of skin colored, I need. And then I need this white splash that's around him. So I'll kind of just select this whole area here, and then I can go in and refine that just a little bit. So I'll zoom in even more, and now I'll use the lasso to start refining what I really want. So I don't really need any of this that's hovering over the top, but I would really like that splash of water. So I'm going to kind of outline here, and then before I get too far and mess up, I'd rather kind of, oops, I added that. I would rather stop so I don't put a ton of work into one section, then it doesn't work. So I'm going to go around the splash, around the other splash, and just come back and do this piece by piece. That kind of makes the most sense. So I've got this splash around him. I'll add in the next part. So I'll take this out. But then I can always add stuff back in. So I see this other little white splash that I would like. So I can take that and bring that back in if I'd like to, which I think I would. I'm going to subtract a little bit of stuff over here, but you can see how his body still glows through the water, and I would really like it to do that in the final image. So I'm going to actually keep that, because I think that will work well when I add it back in. So what I'm going to run into here is I'm going to want to take out a lot of this, but I also still need some of those random splashes of water. So I'll probably have to kind of go around those a little bit or just add them back in. Right now I just kind of went around it, but I might just kind of add them back in as I go. I think I'll probably just take out this whole section though. I'm not sure that this is worth trying to outline. I can just kind of add this splash right here and like a couple of these little dots. So now I'm headed into this section where I'm really going to need to take some of it back after I finish. So I'm going to go into here, outline it, and really take out most of this section. So I will outline that, but I can pretty easily see where the splashes continue. So I'm gonna just kind of add them back in as I go. Need this. I need a couple of these marks right here, and I can just kind of be a little bit random with it. I definitely chose something that's a little bit challenging. So if it doesn't work perfectly, I'll still be pretty happy with what I did. I'll take out a little bit there, a little bit there. And I can still feel pretty good about what I've done. I'll take out this section here because that is way too light blue for where I'm actually putting him. So I think this is good enough for what I'm doing. I'll feather the edges just a little bit. I think it's probably a good idea. It gives him like a slight glow. I don't want to have too much of a glow. I'll just give just a little bit. And now I can move him, and I think I'll put him in here because it kind of makes sense. So let's put him down. I'll put him in here. I kind of want to make him bigger because I want to make him the focal point, but it's kind of hard to make him bigger and still have him make sense in this scene. So I can up the clarity a little bit and just make it really clear, I guess. I can maybe brighten him up a little bit more and make the light kind of be shining on him. I can still, I'll darken the shadows. And I can do a couple things to make him stand out. So I can make him a bit brighter than everything else, but I'm still going to cool him down a little bit, just to make sure he still kind of matches the scene. But because he's brighter, I think there will be more attention on him, which could be good. And then there's a last line that I wanted to include in there, which is the shoot an apple off my head thing. So I think I'll put those, I'll just kind of scatter them in the water around him. So I'm actually going to use the image with all the pieces of fruit on it that I used for the Fruit Man demonstration. So I'll just select my apple from there. Easy enough. So I'll grab the apple. And I kind of feel like I should make it a little bit bigger than a regular apple so people can really see these getting tossed around. So let's adjust it just a little bit. We'll make it work in this scene. We'll turn down the saturation. We'll cool down the temperature. And that should help. Tone down the highlights. That kind of thing. So we can have these little floating apples. I'll have another one kind of running off the page. I think that would be interesting. So I'll grab an apple, cut out. Grab this one. I suppose I could have tried to just duplicate the other apple, but it's okay. We'll just grab this one. We'll have it floating in the front there. I think that makes sense. You know, in this nonsensical scene. So I'll just change the temperature right away and start toning down the saturation, tone down the highlights, turn down the exposure, start blending it in. I think that makes more sense in that scene. Now I am good to go. So I'm going to save that to my camera roll. And now I have this finished image. So let's go to my camera roll. And now I have this new scene all ready to go from Photoshop Mix. Anyway, thank you so much for watching, and please let me know if you have any questions.